Hello and welcome back to the show, everyone. I'm your host, Levi with Mailbox Money. A lot of the systems we rely on every day, from emergency services to local government, run on software most of us never see. But when those systems don't work, everyone feels it. Today's guest is Eric Nyhaug. Eric works in the public safety technology space and leads product support teams that help cities, counties, and agencies get the most out of the software they depend on. Eric, welcome to the show. We're glad
Yeah,
to have you here.
sounds great. Thanks for the invite.
Yes, sir. Eric, if you don't mind, could you give us some of your personal background? Let the people know who you are and where you're coming from.
Yeah, absolutely. Eric Nyhaug, lifelong South Dakota resident.
Nice.
Grew up in Sioux Falls. I attended the university down south for my undergrad. I attended USD for my undergrad. Got my undergrad in
Nice.
healthcare administration. Worked in healthcare tech for the first 20 years after college. Decided that somewhere in the healthcare journey, I decided that maybe healthcare wasn't the good long-term play for me. So I went back to school and got my MBA from USF.
Very
So
cool.
I attended the University of Sioux Falls as well. Um, and then, 9 years ago, I dove into the public safety space, which has kind of always been in my family. My dad was a law enforcement officer in Sioux Falls, retired as captain. I have friends and family that were or are law enforcement today. And then now more personal, we have a son who is a law enforcement officer in Sioux Falls as well. So
Oh,
it kind
wow.
of hits
It is
home on
very,
several fronts. Yeah,
very close to the heart then.
yeah,
Very cool. I see for those just listening in Eric's background, I think I see a lot of I can't fully make them out, but like police badges and maybe some fire emblems and stuff like
yeah.
that.
Yeah. So it kind of took off organically when I got into this space. I've just been as I go to agencies and collect and build relationships with agencies. I've just formed a collection of patches that hang on my wall. I'm just shy of 1,700 patches in my wall now. So collection is growing, but I'm
Wow.
running out of wall space. So
Gonna have to open it up a wall like Chip and Joanna Gaines, huh?
that's right, exactly. Except I'm not much of a handyman. So
Hire that out then. Very cool. Well, Eric, would you mind getting into kind of what you're doing, what company you're with, and what it's all about there?
yeah. So as of July 1st, I took a new role at CentralSquare Technology, which is a public safety sector software company, the largest public safety company in North America. So we take care of all your needs. If you've been pulled over by Highway Patrol in South Dakota or Sioux Falls PD and been written a ticket, that was on our software. Um, so they leverage us, build relationships with those clients. I mean, we have all kinds of solutions, right? Um, I deal with only the public safety side of the house, but we have another
Okay,
complementary side of the house that's public admin, like your utility billing, your property taxes, that type of stuff.
gotcha,
Um,
gotcha.
and then the public safety side that I deal with is all, know, what you think of as typical public safety, right? Um, like your tough books and your squad cars, right? That police officers and fire and EMS use, right? iPads
Mhm.
in the squad cars. Now we have applications that work on our smartphones and our iPads as well. Um, we service 911 dispatch centers. We have our own 911 call handling solution. So we're kind of a all-in-one shop as far as public safety software goes.
Very cool. Local here in Sioux Falls, and a good chunk of the listeners. Did you do anything involved with the public safety training center? Is your guys' software in that building here in Sioux Falls?
So yeah, the public safety software that are the center that you're referring to, they leverage our Pro Suite call handling. So our when when a person or a public person in the public calls 911, they use our software to pick up the phone. They use our
Hmm.
software to dispatch law enforcement or fire or EMS to that incident. So it's kind of a full loop for us.
That's very cool.
Yeah,
That
it is
very
very
cool.
cool. So when you see the on the shows where you see 911 pick up the call, they they're using a solution like ours, if not ours. So
Very nice.
yeah,
I gotta ask, like you said, on the shows or whatever, is a lot of that just kind of are they usually making it up? Or are they basing it truly off of your guys' technology there?
I would say that most well thought out TV shows are pretty close to truth, right? Now,
Very cool.
one thing I would say is like they don't, when you watch Netflix and they solve a crime in a 40-minute episode, they don't do that here.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
don't do that anywhere. Uh, it's a little bit more drawn out of that, especially on the bigger cases. But for the most part, when you call a 911 and they show you what's going on the screen, like that's what's going on. They pick up your lat long from your phone. They can pinpoint you. Our dispatchers that use our software can send, if I was stranded in the wilderness and I didn't know where I was at, and I
Hmm.
called 911, they could send me a text. I would have to accept the text, then I could live stream them footage of where I'm at so they could
Oh, wow.
figure out where I'm at. And it, technology is amazing. It's came a long ways in last 30 years.
No kidding. No kidding. Yeah, truly some life-saving stuff in there. Um,
Absolutely.
Eric, obviously, you got, like you said, quite a few of those badges and emblems. So you're traveling all around. Are you mostly working with places that already have your guys' technology integrated, or are you is it a mix of both, going and
Yeah.
trying to get integrated in communities?
Yeah, I would say it's probably an 80-20 mix, right? 80% is the current clientele, 20% I'm assisting with some sales opportunities as well, talking about our support methodologies and our product management methodologies with clients, or potential clients, I should say. But a lot of my focus is on current client retention, um, you know, and then your standard like support metrics, right? Like mean time to resolution, functional support backlog. You get into the kind of the what I call the mundane nuts and bolts of support, but it supports the whole org, which supports services implementing projects. It supports sales out in the field selling stuff. It supports our cloud initiative, our cloud partners. It supports our development and QA partners. So we're one of the few organizations inside that kind of actually touch each other's other departments tangentially, right? So
Yeah, gotcha. That's cool, being
yeah,
interwoven and everything.
yep.
I was gonna ask on the more rural communities, have you been seeing a lot of them are maybe outdated and need to get up to date with the newer technologies, or what are you seeing out there in those kind of communities?
I would say over the last, well, since I've been here almost a decade now, right? You see the agencies that have been on the legacy softwares, right? The homegrown versions. Some of them have migrated from actual physical file cards that they wrote on, to our
Yeah.
to our solution. So I would say that a good majority of the clientele are making the move, right? Now what some agencies are doing in rural areas is they're co-oping with their sheriff or their fire or their um, other PDs around them, right? To kind of split the cost, right? One build means, one set of servers, one set of, configuration costs, et cetera. So we're doing a lot of those types of things as well to help agencies kind of drive some of the cost down.
Okay, very neat. Yeah, that makes sense. Being able to do multiple communities from one hub serving them, that makes a
Right.
lot of sense. Is part of your guys' job and what you do, obviously, the people that you're serving with these technologies are under like high stakes, real situations. Is part of what you guys do prepare them like with your software, get them a little more comfortable and take some of that edge off of them?
Yeah. So we have once a sale is procured, then we have a whole process that kicks off with our implementation team, right? there's a build team, there's a training team. We train super users at agencies that are large enough. Like when you get into like uh, the 50 sworn officers, and you start getting the where people want to have super users so they can have admin rights and they can administrate stuff their own selves on their builds. So there's a lot of things that kick off up at that sales point that just is like continuously learning up until the go live date.
Very cool. And can you kind of walk us through the process of that go live day, what it actually ends up looking like for the user?
Yeah, so leading up to go live, obviously we're configuring their production environment, right? But then at the same time, a good majority of them have a training or a test environment too, which is what they've been playing in. They've been testing out configuration in. Um, and so any final tweaks we've made in training, we will then mirror that to the production environment. We'll do a cut over to production from their old system, and then it's typically early in the morning or late in the evening when we cut over. And then we have, depending on contractual obligations, we either have folks remote available, folks on site available, or some hybrid in between.
Okay, gotcha. And then I was gonna ask on the sense that you're talking about going over from an older system to what your guys' system. What are some of the main benefits that you've been seeing when people are making this transition, and and how does it affect their daily work?
Yeah, I think there's two things that I learned in both settings, right? In healthcare and in public safety is um, those groups of people like two things, right? They like change and they don't like to change, right? So
Yep.
a lot of that is overcoming perceived obstacles with different workflows. Um, Dispatchers, law enforcement officers are creatures of habit. Um,
Yeah, for
and,
sure.
and part of it is because they have to be aware of everything else going on around them, right? Um, so so there's some obstacles that we have to overcome sometimes is like workflows, helping people out. And we have a list of best practices that we kind of try to institute or at least talk through the agencies with. But as far as like the newer technologies, you know, we're leveraging better technology. We're leveraging a lot of our solutions now. I've made the move to AWS cloud. Um,
Okay.
so so we're kind of in that transformation where agencies are being approached now about moving to the cloud at their hardware refresh time versus buying new servers, et cetera, to be on site, right? And a lot of that is for the things you see posted on the internet and on the news, right? The ransomware attacks, the takeovers of your data, the locking it up. So there's a lot of that plays into that. I would think that that critical security infrastructure is probably one of the bigger reasons why people move anymore. Um, and and for what it's worth, I mean, you see all the time online where people are asking hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars to have access to their data back.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so that's some of the benefits, right? I mean, we could go on and on, but um, the the benefits for one agency might not be the same as the benefits for another agency, right? Um, but a lot of it's usage of the same software across like geographic areas typically. So like
That
South
makes
Dakota,
sense.
for example, you know, I, I can't say for certain, but a good litany test would be I would say we have 80% coverage in South Dakota. CentralSquare does. So
That makes sense, like you said, geographical area. I'm assuming that, a lot of these agencies, departments, they get movement between people, and it's a lot easier when they're already using the same stuff to get up
yeah,
and moving a lot quicker. So that makes perfect sense. Um, Eric, how about coming into the future? Obviously, like you said, technology is always changing, all these, AI integration and like that. What do you think is going to be the most impactful in public safety agencies over the next decade here?
I think you're going to see. I think it's three things. I think it's the move to the cloud, right? Because um, we've just kind of started that journey in the public safety sector in general. Um, it's been kind of a slow move to get agencies comfortable with the cloud for lots of reasons, right? A lot of them have in-house IT staff. A lot of them it's other reasons. But we're moving that way. AI is another one. We just purchased and integrated an AI solution within our software. So that's coming, and that's going to be probably forever evolving over the next decade, right?
No kidding.
Just when you think you've tapped into its full capabilities, and you realize it can do something else, right? And right now we're using it to we're using AI to rethink some of the ways we've previously done stuff, not just from a public safety software perspective, but from an internal perspective as well. So
That's cool.
that's been revolutionary. And then I think the other thing that is probably really going to take off, um, and we don't have this offering, but I see a lot of it when I go to these conferences, is as just drone capabilities, right?
Yeah.
The like the drone, like the real time drone dispatching, where if there's a carjacking or a robbery, um, a good majority of towns, larger towns that have the fiscal money to spend on that type of technology, they have dispatched drones that can be on site minutes before law enforcement officers.
Yeah. No
And they're
kidding.
nothing more than and they're not like, people hear drones and it's not like strike drones. It's camera drones that can focus on a license plate or an automobile and track it, right?
Mm-hmm. Get that information back to the agency and then let them do with it. But like you said, the time to dispatch and everything, you could get that out a lot quicker.
Yep.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, they're using, I mean, even if you look at Sioux Falls they don't have dispatch drones, but they have drones. If you pay attention to their Facebook page, they tell you
Hmm.
every time they launch their drone.
Yeah.
Like
Interesting.
they'll announce it. I mean, it's department policy amongst almost all departments that they announce it when they're flying them, and they get used.
Eric, is there for CentralSquare Technologies, is there anything really that you're excited about coming up here maybe in the near future going on at the company?
Oh yeah, I mean, we're just kind of hitting our hot season, right? For kind of all the things that we do. There was a group of us that were just in Washington D.C. working with NINA, which is our National Emergency 911 Association. So and that drives um, we were doing some pretty cool things on Capitol Hill this year. We were trying to get some reclassification for telecommunicators to be under first responders. Right now, they don't have first responder benefits. They're kind of labeled as this weird admin/clerical position. And then, as well, last week when we were in Capitol Hill, we talked to, I met with people from Dusty Johnson and John Thune and Mike Brown's
Mhm.
office about um, starting to look at, the fully funding a national next gen 911 system, right? Like right now when you look across the country, a majority of the country is still on cable or on copper wires that, are 50, 60 longer years old.
Yeah,
Um,
no kidding.
but moving to the next gen 911, that's expensive, right? So we were out there talking to folks on Capitol Hill about, how do we go about starting the conversation about funding, right? Because it's going to be critical. When you look around the globe, a lot of the bigger countries that you think about are already progressing that way. So we need to step that up. But then as far
Awesome.
as other things go, right? Like in 2 weeks, we have our CentralSquare Engage in Washington, D.C. That's our big client engagement that we put on seminars. We have my whole support team is going to be there. Services, engineering, we're all going to be there for our clients to answer questions. So we typically have a really good turnout for that. And then it kind of turns into the summer grind, right? It's the APCO and the NINA conferences that come around. So it's cyclical in our business, just like every other business, right? Where you got like the same, you have the NINA goes to Washington, you have our Engage, you have APCO and NINA, and then in the fall we have IACP, which is the International Association of the Chief of Police Conference. that's held every year, and so that's pretty that's a big conference for us. We have a big presence there. Typically, if anything newer is going to come out, it'll be around that time for from our organization.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, it's a busy 7 months leading up here. So
That's all right. It's a good problem to have, right?
that's right.
Eric, if people want to learn about more about yourself, your role, or your organization at Central Square, where would you send them to do so?
If they want to reach out to me specifically,
Yeah.
is that what you're? Yeah, just look me up on LinkedIn. That's kind of my go-to default, right? I my wife would probably tell you I spend too much time on LinkedIn at night just scrolling. So, but LinkedIn is a good way to get a hold of me, and not just for reasons it's not in my company email, but for I have it on my phone, my iPad, and my laptop. So if people want to get a hold of me and talk or ask questions, and if you're just curious about Central Square, just you can Google it and centralsquare.com, and you can read about majority of our offerings we have out there. So
Beautiful.
yeah,
Well, Eric, I appreciate you spending your time and getting us educated on this public safety sector. I think, like you gave the example, I thought was pretty funny of when people are getting a ticket.
yeah,
But I do believe people really, they benefit from having great public safety, and we're lucky that we're in a place that has these technologies that they can fully implement to benefit the community. So thank you for giving us a little
yeah,
sneak
no
peek into
problem.
that.
Yeah, no problem. I appreciate the offer to join you.
Of course, sir. Well, thank you everyone for listening. Hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll see you on the next one.